So, Damian Hall, I've only read one of your books, and it was a terrible thing because it launched me on this addiction. I,
Tea?
tea, cake, and running and adventures, I think. So I want to thank you for that because I've never felt so alive.
Oh, blimey. Well, thanks. Most people wave the book at me and want their money back, so that's something. Thank you.
So this, I mean, you've been running for a handful of years, and this year you won the 268 mile spine race. Yeah. And then a few short days, it seems like you're in the Barkley Marathons.
Um, yes. Well, yeah. This is tricky because, of course, I coach Mia, and I'm always preaching, a good amount of recovery between big efforts. This is a tricky one because as you probably know, the Barkley, there are lots of certain amounts of things about the Barkley are kept secret for good reason. It's not just sort of keeping it secret for the sake of it, but it's partly to protect its to keep it going forward. They don't want lots of people turning up at the park, for example. So yeah, various things about the race are kept secret, and so when you apply, you don't know exactly when the race will be. You know roughly, but it could be a month either way. So I guess I hoped it wasn't quite so close. And then the spine race was also a week, or at least the best part of a week later than it normally would be. So both things were a bit closer than I hoped. But I think it was 6 or 7 weeks. It wasn't terrible, but yeah, not something I would normally do because this stuff messes us up, especially if you go several nights without sleep or good sleep. But it might be that, yeah, this stuff is increasingly making me more stupid and therefore just signing up for more of these things. But yeah, we do have to be careful with recovery. I'm not doing anything for a while now. I'm chilling now. This is my off season, chilling.
Oh, cool. Oh, in term, you talked about messing you up. Do you think it's made you a better person, ultra running? Sorry.
Oh gosh, what a question. Um, I do feel I'm gradually getting more stupid, but the bar wasn't very high. Um, yeah, I hope it has. I hope it has. I mean, certainly some of the lessons, probably fairly obvious lessons from ultra running, do apply to life. And the one I like best actually is the low mood, eat food. 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 11:30 in the morning. In fact, yeah, just for our call, I started on a snack. Well, I wasn't not looking forward to the call. I wasn't in a bad mood, but keep the energy, keep the energy up. Yeah, low mood, eat food is a good one. I take into normal life. The classic one, I suppose, is yeah, breaking these challenges up into bite-sized chunks. If you think about running 268 miles, that's pretty daunting, even if you've done it before, and you can be overwhelmed with that. But if you think, well, I'll just make it to the first checkpoint, or let's just think about the first hour, then it becomes manageable. And yeah, that's definitely applicable to big challenges in life. Writing a stupid book, for example, or yeah, breaking it up into the small chunks. I mean, they're two things. I suppose it never always gets worse is a mantra I quite like as well. I quite like that one because it's a bit ambiguous. Like it could get worse. Um, um, but it no, it doesn't normally. Low mood, eat food. Yeah, those sorts of things. I guess yeah. I guess it teaches you to keep trying, I suppose, and another one is trying to be in the moment. Actually, that's probably a big one that it's taught me. Trying to live in the moment. That Buddhist idea, actually, and I don't know about other people necessarily, but I'm often thinking of emails I haven't replied to or things I need to do, and I'm not necessarily thinking about right now. What am I doing now? And that's a shame and probably not that super healthy. You've got to try and live in the moment to an extent, and when you're trail running, for example, you've got to watch your feet sometimes. So that makes you be, or you're trying to navigate or think of something you're consciously doing now, and actually that's quite healthy. I believe to realize, to spend that time being present right now. Yeah, there are 3 or 4 things that sort of spring to mind. Whether it's actually made me a better person, I've no idea. Probably I would.
Should we bring your wife in and get her to?
No, no, I think she'd have a view on that. She'd probably sound just tired all the time and away a lot. Well, hopefully she'd be more rounded than that, but she might point those two things out.
Yeah.
Well, with like you do a lot of stuff, you know, like you casually break records, you're a coach to many athletes, you're a father. I was about to say you're a wife. You're not a wife. Husband is the word. How do you do it all? And also, you know, like you referred to being present there. How do you do each and every one of them things without being all consumed by running? You know, like a yeah. Can you
Yeah.
words?
I mean, again, my wife, I remember quite a few years ago when I was, really getting the running bug, she said I was talking about it like I was a drug addict. And that's kind of, helpful to sort of get the best out of yourself to an extent. If you start thinking of, I was thinking about every other aspect of my life and how it affected my running. But yeah, as a member of a family, that might not always be the sort of healthiest and most and the best way to think. So yeah, I guess another thing is I don't always get it right. I guess it is good to have, like, so I'm going, yeah, it's just for the Easter holidays we're talking, and we're going, we're going away as a family somewhere, and I will run most days, but just a little short run. That's really nice. I mean, my kids aren't particularly impressed or interested in my running, which is actually really helpful. So when I'm with them, they're not going, "Oh wow, Daddy, you ran 100 miles, and what's your next race? You did amazingly." It's not like that at all. They're not very interested. They're much more interested in what they're doing, and rightly so. So that is actually pretty good for me, to be around them, and to remember I suppose what's important. Yeah, you could make the mistake of thinking running was too important or more important than it really is. In terms of day-to-day stuff, I mean, most of us have numerous roles, don't we? In terms of being members of families or partners or jobs and that sort of thing. But yeah, I probably do spend an unhealthy amount of time thinking of myself as a runner. And it's probably chatting to people like you to remind me that I should also remember I'm some of these other roles as well. I suppose I don't have a neat answer for that, but it's got me thinking, and it's a really good question.
Huh. It's just because I'm 48. I've got two kids similar age as you, and a wife and a business and people I care about. But reading your book, and it just reminded me of how much I love having adventures, how much I want to be in wild places, and until I can coerce my family to come with me, it's necessarily it's balancing that solo time versus all the other parts of my life, and maybe there is no answer.
Yeah, I mean, I try and argue, and I try and tell myself, especially when I come back from these things, I feel a great sense of, I suppose, satisfaction and joy, and hopefully I bring that back, and I'm a person who, yeah, maybe some frustrations or some have hopefully gone, and you come back feeling good, hopefully. But yeah, I'm also very tired and maybe a bit grumpy. And then I guess I have tried to incorporate my children and my wife into some of these things, but they don't always work. And if I'm honest, like I did say to my wife, a few days ago, actually, like, well, I'm thinking of this event, we could turn it into a family holiday. And she said, yeah, but you'll be away for 3 days and then you'll be knackered. And so basically it'll be me watching the kids, looking after the kids for 4 days. And I was like, you're right, actually, that isn't going to work necessarily. So I actually try less to involve them less than I used to. But I think I'm more conscious that, yeah, that I shouldn't just be the runner. I suppose I see it as usually like sort of 3 big adventures that I could hopefully go and have each year. And hopefully the training doesn't interfere too much. I'm very lucky now. They're at school during the day, and yeah, I can do my training in the day. So hopefully that's not getting in the way too much. But I think most runners who are parents are going to have that ongoing question of are they getting the balance right? And I suppose, yeah, once or twice my kids have said you're away a lot, or and that has made me really think, all right, yeah, maybe don't do that long run the following weekend away, away where you're going to go, or on the Saturday or something. So kids are pretty honest, aren't they? They're pretty good at They don't beat around the bush. So yeah, they're worth listening to, I think.
Many people we talk to, especially runners, sort of you're talking about balance. There's a balance between addiction and passion. Any words of advice on keeping to passion rather than addiction?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I find I'm probably not the best judge of whether I'm getting it right, I suppose. And yeah, my kid, I mean, I was, half joking about asking my kids, but yeah, my wife's quite good as well of sort of saying, yeah, you're away a lot. I think it's got to be the people around you, really. If they're going to be honest with you, which those people will be with me. They're pretty good. And I mean, things you could do is, I do find the better organized I am, the better it, sorting my year out well in advance. Say, look, I'm probably going to be away these dates, months and months in advance, so that it's not like, oh, suddenly like I'm not here next weekend. Like that would cause some tension and some emotions. So planning can come into it, and I suppose judging, asking people around you. And then you realize, I mean, because I have recently been away for 2 weeks, and you realize, you don't really know what maybe one of your kids is doing at school or at Cubs. My son goes to Cubs. Like I realized I didn't really know what he'd been doing, and that was a good reminder of like, okay, you've missed some things now. You need to sort of catch up. Actually, I'm overdoing it. So this Friday I'm going to Cubs and sleeping out with all the Cubs in some somewhere miserable. So I'm trying to make up for it. Yeah.
Awesome.
With running very long distances, for you, I mean, firstly, well, here's I guess the question: why? What's the drive to do it? Like, obviously, you started off from running. Was it a half marathon where you dressed as a toilet?
that was a marathon, but yeah.
Marathon. Like, what's the? Because I think for a lot of people, the drive to do anything like that tends to come from you want to be approved or loved, or you want to achieve. From kind of, I mean, being coached by you and reading your books, and it seems like there's just an inherent joy for just running, and I love that, because I think there's often this kind of David Goggins-esque suffering. It's all about it being a hard slog. And what's kind of your thing with that?
I think it's a few things. I genuinely almost always. You've got to be careful, because like, say, I did the spine and it's 3.5 days of running. Did I love all of that? No, I didn't. I wasn't 100% happy and joyful at all times during that. That would be a big lie. But I suppose I knew that the feeling afterwards would be fantastic. And I was happy as much as I could be, especially when I've really noticed now, actually, not everyone's the same, but I've really noticed seeing people, especially on these lonely races, actually, where you get to a checkpoint, or if you see your crew or something, I really get a strong feeling from that. And I noticed at Barkley, maybe more than some other runners, like I would come in and I'm told like I was super chatty compared to a lot of other people, actually. So I get a lot from other people, I think. Why do we do it? Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think there are several reasons for me. Some of it is you get this sort of sense of feeling alive, like when you sort of put your emotions out there, and especially when you go, I think, through 24 hours or so, you get very tired and you get very authentic. I think you stop being polite to people. You're much more emotional. You could cry at something ridiculous. You could get angry at something ridiculous. It seems to be quite healthy to have those sorts of things every now and then. Now I'm talking as a privileged middle-class white man in a Western country, so we don't have, hopefully, much to fear on a day-to-day level. So it's almost like for people like that, maybe it's useful to go and sort of push our emotions and our hormones and all of that every now and then. Now, not everyone lives in those safe environments, so it may not be the same elsewhere in the world. But partly it's to feel alive. I must admit, I honestly had this feeling a few years ago of like, I haven't ever felt like I'm good at much in life. And then when I discovered running, it wasn't like, hey, I'm great at this, but I felt like I'm not terrible at this. Something about the distance suits me. And I was just early on, I was just very intrigued, and I realized I've always been intrigued by sort of endurance. You know, Scott of Antarctica, stories like that have always intrigued me. Where sort of the hero, which off the top of my head was normally male, unfortunately. There was a spate of most adventure stories being men, sadly, which hopefully is changing. But those stories did fire my imagination when I was a kid, and just going for several days on some sort of quest, has always sort of fired me up. So having a go at that myself, even if it's sort of totally pointless, really, like there's no actual need to. I don't know. It just fills my imagination. Hopefully there's an answer in there. I don't know if I've given 2 or 3, or hopefully some of that, and then it does. You do get endorphins. It does make you happy at times, and hopefully when it's finished as well. Well, always when it's finished. Yeah.
It makes perfect sense to me. I mean, you know, we live privileged lifestyles, and it's, I think for me, it's important to make myself uncomfortable, to be, there's something about, I don't know, just proving my existence.
Yeah, it's almost like checking that you've got those primal elements, those primal things going on still, you know, to feel a bit of fear, but really you're nearly always very safe, you know, but to feel a bit of fear and doubt and disappointment with yourself, you know, and frustration, but then all the, you know, lots of good things too. I think it's useful to do that 2 or 3 times a year, or at least I like doing that.
What's your approach when you get filled of doubt or negativity, or you feel like things just suck and you want to quit? How do you deal with that?
Well, the first one is that nice little mantra: low mood, eat food, because quite often you're underfueled, and therefore, your brain needs a lot of those calories. I think it's over 20%. So you're going to be less motivated and make less good decisions, and feel less happy about what you're doing. So get a snack in at first. Sometimes that sorts it, sometimes it doesn't. And then I suppose you've got to remember that you signed up for it. You know, no one's forcing you to. You probably paid quite a lot of money. You probably trained for 6 months. You probably told all your friends you're doing this. So it's amazing how quickly you sort of go from looking forward to something, being excited about it, to like, oh, this is horrible, I want it to be over. And then, so reminding yourself of those things, and then your why, you know, why you're doing it in the first place. You know, hopefully you've thought about that before the race, so that you sort of have that ready. And then I just, through experience, you just realize, it never always gets worse, and normally around the corner you can feel a bit better. I mean, often it's sunrise actually, so it's natural for your body between, you know, midnight and 5 a.m. to have some kind of slump. Obviously our circadian rhythms and so on, you know, they expect us to sleep. So that's another sort of natural slump zone. But always sunrise has always lifted me, and I think most other people I've chatted to about this, which is quite something. So you just learn from experience that, you know, just because you're going down there doesn't mean you carry on going down there. Normally you're up again, but probably down again.
In them kind of low spots, perhaps where you filled with doubt, or it's just a bit of a kind of overall shit experience, are you kind of trying to like consciously make it better, make it more positive, kind of pull yourself out, or do you kind of just sit in the pit and know that eventually, you know, you come out of it? Like, is it like an active thing, or are you just in the flow and it just all kind of happens?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say there are 2 or 3 things you could do to try and be active, and then if they don't work, then sometimes you just have to go, you know, what's the word? I suppose suck it up for half an hour, Usually it will improve. Work down the little checklist of 2 or 3 things to do. It might be sticking in some music. You know, I found that quite effective, or even a podcast or something. A distraction, you know, something to make you think of something else. Sorry, I'll give you a definition of what a distraction is there. It probably wasn't needed. Or eating some fun food, or maybe it's seeing, you know, maybe you've got a crew, or the next aid station, even if they're not familiar faces, often they're friendly faces, those sorts of things. Maybe you've got some messages on your phone, or written down from people, those sorts of things. So I think be active on it. If all of those haven't worked, you might just have to suck it up for a bit. Hopefully not too long.
Do you think you can teach that sort of a good attitude, mental resilience, or does it just have to be learnt from the experience?
Oh, that's another question I haven't been asked. That's good.
Yes.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't think I've ever met, a sort of trail runner who I don't like. So, but is it those sorts of people with a certain mentality are attracted or to the sport, or the sport sort of teaches you that we're all a bit happier because we get our serotonin fix and or endorphins or whichever one it is. Um, are we all a bit happier because we're out in nature and then so we feel we're generally positive and happy people anyway, or is it I don't know which way around it is, but I just find most people are in sort of trail ultra running generally quite positive and very likable. It'd be interesting to see a study actually whether that has sort of, well, it must have changed some people because you get these amazing stories, and I've got friends who have come from serious backgrounds of addiction of various types and or just sad life experiences, and trail running has kind of saved them, and transformed them to an extent. So maybe that answers my question, that maybe it's the running that sort of changes people. I don't know. It's fascinating, isn't it? It's amazing.
I was wondering, because looking on the outside from this, whether there were any kind of, because everyone seems so enthusiastic and supportive and good people, and are there any Michael Jordans, trip you up, crush the opposition types? You don't have to name names.
I don't. That's another good one. I guess, I mean, when races earlier on in races where I wouldn't be so near the front, people are definitely more talkative, I suppose. When you're at the front of races, people can be very friendly and supportive of each other, but we're not usually chatting all the way. We're more probably self-centered and more maybe preserving our energy, rather than I've run with, say, Kim Collison, is a brilliant runner, record-breaking runner, GB runner, like 3 or 4 times through the night, and we haven't really talked that much every time. And Beth Pascal's another one. I've run through many nights with Beth, and we haven't actually talked all that much, which actually I rather like, because you're just sharing the moment. You don't have to say anything necessarily. I quite like that. But I would say at the top end of the field, people are less talkative, less outwardly friendly, but often will help each other. Like someone goes off course, you shout, hey, you don't go, oh, well, brilliant, I've got a little lead. Or at least I haven't seen that. That's a great question. I do think some people are more competitive minded than others, and I sometimes wonder if I could be almost a bit more sort of angry and a bit more sort of, what's the word, a bit more competitive. I love the sort of paradox of when you're running with someone, are they a friend or a foe? And I wonder if I think too much of they're a friend sometimes, and don't think enough of I've got to beat this person. But you might, if you're more that way inclined, you might look back on your running a few years later and kind of think, oh, I should have been more friendly, or I should have chatted more. I'm not going to beat myself up about it, but I wonder if I'm slightly more that inclined. No, that's a good question.
But it seems you're so kind and so supportive and so enthusiastic for everybody that, you talk about your why. Maybe that's part of it, and without it, there's nothing.
I mean, I genuinely, the spine, I know it sounds miserable to most people. And I did a talk a few weeks ago, and in the audience, the person who was comparing asked, like, hands up, how many people here would want to do the spine race or are interested in the spine race? And no one put their hands up. But honestly, I just love it, and I'm going to do it again next year. And someone said to me just yesterday, actually, why are you doing it? You've won it. Why are you doing it again? And I said, I love it. I genuinely love it. Yeah, there are moments. Of course, there are moments where your feet hurt and your legs hurt and your ego hurts. But mostly, I love it. I know so many people there at the checkpoints, and I know most of the runners. And you're just out on the moors in the weather, I just love it. And I don't know how common that is. You'd hope that was the common feeling amongst most runners, I suppose.
I think that's the for me, that's like my personal love of running, and is just the, like, as you alluded to earlier, just the primal kind of like you know, you're just there alive, feeling everything, the highs, the lows, moving out in nature. And I think it's like, I think ultra running can often be framed as this kind of like sufferfest, you know, and I think it can be kind of like try and make it as grueling and as hard as possible. And I think it's a really cool paradox how you can have, you know, like you've just done the Barkley, you know, arguably one of the hardest ultra marathons in the world, but still have fun. And I think there's a really cool thing there between kind of experiencing such difficulty, and even though you're in pain and everything hurts and you're uncomfortable, there's still an element of kind of fun there, and perhaps not fun in the, you know, perhaps more type 2 fun or even type 3 fun, but I think, yeah, kind of do you see it as kind of this kind of fun outing, even though it's a painful experience, or are you kind of in the camp of suffering and grinding and
No, I liked more what you were saying before the suffering and grinding bit. Yeah, and yeah, I want to sort of just say, like, I can't pretend I'm happy at all moments, grinning, and yeah, there could well be people listening to this thinking I saw him in that race and he, you know, he was really rude, or he, you know, he didn't say thanks at the checkpoint, or, you know, I'm not grinning all the time, but I'm definitely. I mean, I love other runners who are like that. Say Kim Collison's very smiley. I mean, Debbie Martin Kansani is another one who just every picture you see of her in a race, she's grinning. And yeah, I mean, studies have shown, I think we can add about 2% to our performance a smile. I think it releases, is it sort of natural painkillers or endorphins, like smiling genuinely can help your performance. Although there are times when, you know, don't force it if you feel absolutely miserable. Yeah, but I do just love it. And I suppose also now, like, it takes a few years. In ultra running, it's so varied, isn't it? There are so many different types of races you can do. Could be several days, could be a multi-stage or single stage, could be on road, could be flat, could be hills, could be mountains, could be woods. So after a while, you sort of learn, I suppose, which of those appeal to you more. So I am at a stage where I know, yes, particular types of races I'm really into. And I suppose you do hone in more on the ones that are going to suit you and make you feel happier, I suppose. Whereas early on, you sort of try a few different things out. But yeah, no, I love it. I love it.
Do you have a favorite failure you could tell us about?
Just my life in general. Favorite failure. That's yes. Okay. Yeah. So I've had three race DNFs if we include the Barkley just now. The second one was the spine race last year, so 2022, and yeah, physically my groin sort of went. It was, yeah, I felt it early on, but you start to feel various things in a race like that, and then it started getting really painful. And I just couldn't imagine. I had about 24 hours ahead of me, and I just couldn't imagine it being sensible or you know, in any way fun or worthwhile to carry on. So I elected to sort of stop in the race, even though I was winning by 4 hours, which is obviously a frustration. And it was a lovely sunny day, but actually, you know, I had a brilliant time up till then, and I'm not. Like, I know that wasn't a mental failure because I had a physical issue. I wanted to carry on. So I'm perfectly okay going, okay, a physical thing happened. And I suppose it's easier now that I've gone back this year and had the sort of run I was hoping to have the previous year. So it's sort of banished those demons. I guess that does make it more helpful. But yeah, the year before, effectively, I failed or it was a physical thing. But I can see now I could have managed the race a bit more cleverly, a bit smarter, a bit more chilled, which is what I did this year. But yeah, that might be a favorite failure in that, just I still had such fun, I suppose, with people and on the moors. So yeah, that's the one that springs to mind.
In your book, you talk about the deceitful relationship between your mind and your body. How do you know, like, this is something serious, I need to stop, versus this is my head just whining?
Yeah, I mean, by now, I think that's really relevant to the previous question, that by now, because I've been doing it for 10 years, I guess you get familiar sensations and then unfamiliar sensations. So yeah, there are lots of familiar ones. You know, your quads will start to complain. Your feet may have complaints. Even sometimes get like, you know, a weird pulsing in my arm if I've been using poles a lot, and I just think, well, I had that before and it was nothing. So yeah, familiarity, a familiar thing usually shouldn't be too much to worry about. But say this groin thing, it started off as a, yeah, sort of just a dull ache, which wasn't too concerning, but then it was a sharp pain, and I was like, I've not had this before. This feels like a new thing. That, yeah, that was that. Yeah, it was an unfamiliar pain, so that felt like, I still feel like that was the smart decision. So that's one way to look at it, like familiar, unfamiliar. I mean, I guess on a lot of these races, you do have medical, especially like the spine, you do have medical support at the checkpoints. You know, qualified medics, and you can ask and show them. Not always easy with the groin, but you can get their verdict, and that's helpful. And I must admit, early on in my ultra running, I remember doing a 100-miler that I really underestimated, and I had I felt like my Achilles was quite grumpy, and I was thinking, oh, you know, my Achilles hurts. I wonder if it's serious. And then because I was really tired, thinking, if they tell me it's serious, I could stop. Oh, that would be nice. I'd like, you know, and I wanted them to tell me that it was serious, or at least worth stopping for. So I remember going up to the medics and being really annoyed that they said, oh, you should be all right. And I remember feeling really annoyed, like, I can't just stop if they said it's fine. So I did carry on and finish it. But yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of things there, I think, to go on.
Do you, like, obviously you're a pretty big deal now, Damian. Like you're winning stuff. You've got a blue tick as well on Instagram, which is like, that makes you, yeah.
I'm not paying for one on Twitter.
Do you have to pay for one?
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure.
Oh wow. Well, do you feel any form of pressure to perform well, because like, I know for many people, and probably self included in a certain way, running is a kind of, well, you've mentioned many times, it's for the joy of running, right? How do you kind of balance the joy of running and the love of running with perhaps pressure to perform and succeed, and especially now you have a relatively public view in on you? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think the time that felt the worst was before UTMB in 2018, where I felt I was a bit, on reflection, I was a bit too public with my my ambition was to get top 10. I'd been 12th the year before, and I had two friends, Matt and Ellie from Summit Fever Media. They're making a film about it. And then I also did a magazine story, kind of, I was asked to do the story, but I did do a story sort of saying I'm aiming for top 10 and this is all the hard work I'm doing to try and get it. And I was sort of okay with that until, the story went online, which I hadn't realized. So I piled all this pressure on myself. And then even in Chamonix, people were sort of, they all meant well, but people were shouting sort of, good luck for top 10. And yeah, it did get to me. It did get to me a bit of like, you're top 10 or you failed, and what I've managed to do, I think, over time is you kind of spin it, and most of that pressure is actually people wanting you to do well. It's nearly all supportive, or all supportive as far as I know, and I do seem to get a very good, a lot of lovely people sending me lovely messages, around these things. I feel very well. I feel like I'm disproportionately liked. So yeah, I think you just spin it and think, well, it's people wanting you to do well, and I suppose a bit of pressure comes from sponsorship as well, but I've got this lovely long-term relationship with Innovate now, and I failed many times, and they've not gone, we don't want to work with you anymore, and they've been very supportive. So yeah, and I must admit, in the last 2 years, I've had more probably more mishaps than successes, and yeah, I haven't always enjoyed those things being, I suppose, filmed or quite or on social media. That hasn't always been great, but I kind of thought, well, hold on, when things went well, I was happy to I was happy for the videos and the photos to be shared everywhere. In a way, you've got to suck it up and take both things. I just spin it and think hopefully, these people just wish me well. Maybe I'm deceiving myself, but that's how I tell myself. And you've got pressure because because you might be capable of doing certain things, you know. So and I think it has helped me too. I think it's made me more focused about preparing for things, whether it's sort of drawing up a nutrition plan or that sort of thing beforehand. I think it's helped focus me at times. And then in the race, when it gets hard, you kind of think, oh, well, all these people have put their effort in to help me in various ways. You know, don't slack off now. Don't be lazy now. So it can really help as well, I would say.
In terms of your preparation, how have sports psychologists helped you?
Yeah, I've had about it was during lockdown actually, when there was almost nothing much to do, and I was preparing this is 2020. I was preparing for a record attempt on the Pennine Way, and I just really, more than anything, I had time, but also I was like, well, so many people say ultra marathon running is like 50% in the head, and yet how many of us are preparing mentally? You know, what mental preparation do we do? So yeah, I've only had 3 or 4 sort of consultations with Josie Perry, who's got a few good books actually. I think her website is called Performance in Mind, and I would say it wasn't like revelatory, but it just nicely confirmed some things. And one of them was that classic know your why. You know, she encouraged me to think, what are your values? You know, write them down and think, why are you doing this thing? And then visualize, like literally write, draw a picture of it, or get someone to draw a picture of it, or have it somewhere visually. Put it on a water bottle, put it on your arm, put it on the vehicle, support vehicle. That was quite useful. And also another good one was, like, I was debating various ways to do the record attempt, and she encouraged me to, take control of it and be as autonomous as possible. Like, yeah, don't start it at a time that suits someone else. Start it at the time that suits you, because otherwise, later down the road, you'll sort of resent that, and you'll think, well, I didn't want to start at 10 o'clock anyway. I wanted to start at 6 or whatever. That won't help you. You've got to almost be a bit more selfish and so what else did I learn? And after my first DNF at UTMB in 2019, I had another chat, and that was very interesting. We think ultimately I sort of had underfueled in the race, and she sort of explained how, this idea that you sort of got a chimp in your brain who, the more emotive, the more alarmist sort of part of your brain, and if you're underfueled, that chimp can be louder. So, and the chimp tries to get you out of situations that sort of don't fit your idea of yourself. So that was quite an interesting discussion, and just a reminder to, again, to low mood, eat food. That was quite interesting. So yeah, they're probably the main ways. There's a couple more actually. I mean, in terms of preparation for one of these big things, it's sometimes thinking, okay, what's my biggest fear about this event? And you can either just think it through mentally or write it down. But it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do to prevent it? And what will I do if it happens? It might just be going off route, or I don't know, getting dehydrated, or how are you going to prevent it? And then what are you going to do if it does happen? And studies have shown we can almost create false memories in advance of these things, so that if they do happen, they're not as startling to us, and they're less likely to sort of panic us, which is quite an interesting idea, which I still sometimes do. And also, confidence elements. Sometimes before a race, we're all nearly always a bit nervous, aren't we? And a bit sort of, have I done the training? Am I up to this? But there are various things you can do in terms of just reminding yourself, gaining your confidence back, reminding yourself about your preparation, which is usually where most of your confidence comes from. So quite a few things actually. Now I come to think of it.
Sounds like great advice.
Yeah, no, I think it's been useful. And then, I mean, what's great is anything I learn as a runner helps me as a coach as well. I think, or hope, but Mia can confirm that either way.
It does. So, you're also you founded the Green Runners, right?
I was one of several co-founders. There are at least 10 of us co-founders. I must admit, I did almost none of the actual real work.
Well, I mean, I think it's amazing, and I guess like you what are the words? Like, I saw your Instagram post the other day about Shell and European athletics. Like, for you, is there any kind of resistance to having such a strong voice publicly? Or, you know, because that's quite a, I imagine with some of the backlash you get in the comments, and some people that, you know, call you a hypocrite and whatever. I mean, I think it's super inspiring for somebody to just kind of stand and shout about something that they truly believe in, they stand for, despite all of that.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's been a slightly awkward time in that I've just flown to America and back, although I'd like to say, you know, it's my only flight in 4 years. So that's allowed people who, you know, who aren't on board to sort of, yeah, point a finger, which has been, I don't know, I mostly find it quite good fun. I mean, I honestly feel like I get at least 90% supportive comments and so on, and some people really supportive. You know, I've had people message me saying, look, if you want to do Barkley again next year, I'll pay for the carbon offsets. Like, I know you'll feel bad about it, so I'll pay. Which isn't, you know, offsetting is a huge separate debate and stuff. But like, yeah, I get super supportive people, and also the Green Runners. I mean, me and Jasmine both flying, you know, doing a long haul flight somewhere. That's awkward for them, but they were super supportive. And I guess what we're trying to show there is, like, you don't have to give up everything, because that's kind of not fair and not realistic. But the whole Green Runners thing has been wonderful. There are hundreds of members. We were all quite blown away. We're almost reaching our sort of 1 year anniversary. And also, I suppose various running media have been super supportive. And actually, yeah, I can't say, but we a prominent an MP is possibly when does this go out? Yeah, is possibly joining the Green Runners, which is really cool. But yeah, I can't really say much more on that. I probably shouldn't have said that, but but yeah, so it's been a really good journey, and I know it. Yeah, to some people, yeah, there are just some people who won't. Well, yeah, I mean, there are studies on this. How do I explain that? Phrase this without just sounding a bit too. Yeah, when someone does something, some people feel like a finger's pointing at them, and then they can react with a sort of, well, we tend to call it whataboutery. Yeah, but you did that or that. But I think the crucial message is, you know, no one can be perfect. We emit, almost whether we like it or not, you know, our food, our clothes, that there are emissions released, and that's not our fault. You know, we can all probably do a bit better here and there, but that's not our fault. We're in this whole fossil fuel system, which scientists say we must radically overhaul as soon as possible, and that's not really happening. And there's no point in us, you know, arguing amongst ourselves about that. We need to be nudging, you know, governments and fossil fuel companies and maybe big ag as well. So yeah, it's been, the whole Green Runners experience has been, yeah, overwhelmingly positive, and yeah, just so grateful that so many people have jumped in and done so much hard work behind the scenes as well. So it's yeah, it's been wonderful.
I guess with well, something like, you know, the environmental global issue, I think it kind of really links into everything else in life, where like there can just be this kind of perpetual state of guilt that you're not doing enough. How do you deal with that? Like just in general, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's partly that sort of fear of not being perfect, which I've definitely seen holding back companies and other elite runners and brands. They're worried, well, we'll launch it when it's perfect, and that can just look like apathy, unfortunately. There's that fear of not being perfect, and what was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, that guilt. There's a good phrase in my book, I think, from a good friend who actually works at Innovate, but like she said, she had this feeling guilty for existing, you know, because you know, yeah, you can't move almost for releasing emissions, and that's not, you know, it's not our fault. Most of us can maybe do a bit better, but it's not shouldn't be on us to sort this problem out. So it is, I guess, what overrides that for me. And I've definitely made mistakes. I've definitely focused on the wrong areas. Sometimes I've definitely not been, you know, consistent. And but for me, I mean, I've got kids, and I'm scared about the future we're passing on to them. So it's just too urgent to be perfect. You know, I'm just, yeah, that urgency, that, you know, we're in sort of desperate times. These years are crucial just now, these 3 or 4 years. In fact, it was, Sir David King, the former chief of scientific advisor to the government. I think it was in 2019, he said these next 3 or 4 years are critical, you know, and that was, you know, that's 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3 years ago. So it's right now that matters. And it's just too important not to be, to worry about being perfect. Really, I don't care if I get some bits wrong, if you know, hopefully the smaller bits, but like, it's just too urgent not to be talking about it and doing what we can.
I like what you said in your book about just being able to face your kids and saying, I tried my best.
Because I'll be honest, I'm not super optimistic, but what terrifies me is them looking back at us, maybe them and their children, and sort of saying, hey granddad, you know back in the 2020s, when you lot knew what was happening and you knew what needed to happen to better that, improve that, and why didn't anything get done? Why didn't anything happen? And I want to be sure, I suppose, that I did what I could, or at least I mouthed off about it loads. And honestly, I don't think, just to sort of round that off a bit, although my more recent book does have a lot of sort of personal individual stuff you could do, I honestly don't think, individual improvements are great, but honestly, it's got to be nudging the system. It's got to be, and I know that's more intimidating and vaguer. It's got to be voting the right way. It's got to be joining protests. It's got to be supporting protest groups. It's got to be talking about it, like exactly what we're doing now. It's got to be those, nudging for system change. They're the things that will have the impact. It could be at your local running club. It could be a brand, but it's nudging for bigger changes. Not, I would say, don't obsess too much on your own footprint. Of course, it's better if you fly less or cut out red meat, but that won't change things as quickly as nudging for system change.
Going back to that person who would gladly pay to offset your carbon tax as well, I think there's so much to be said for the power of inspiration, and I mean, just watching you do the spine and the Barkley again, and it was like, this guy's inspired and inspiring your kids as well. Who inspires you? Who do you want to sit down with and really get to know and pick their brains?
Well, I'm incredibly lucky. Some of the people who inspire me are my friends as well. So people like Jasmine Paris, who I coach and is a good friend, and was one of the Green Runners co-founders. Really inspired by her. I mean, she's gone further than me in some regards. She doesn't have any sponsors anymore. She's that committed to it. And people like, a good friend of both of ours, Jim Mann, is the guy behind Trees Not Teas, and he's doing incredible things in those areas, carbon capture and so on. Even Killian Jornet, who I won't claim to know that much, but we've exchanged messages, and he's using his platform for those sorts of things, and he doesn't seem to mind when he gets snipers, of course, and he doesn't seem to bat an eyelid, which I quite like. But Claire Gallagher in America, anyone, Dakota Jones is another one. Anyone who's using a platform to try and I guess spread the word, try and galvanize people, try and make real changes. Really inspired by those people. And really, that's my number one goal with what's left of my running career, is to try and make it matter in terms of our climate and ecological emergency. But thankfully, there are other people doing that too, which is great.
And do you think, in terms of what's left of your running career, I mean, do you have an endpoint in mind, or are you just going to see what unfolds?
I'm battling against. I'm 47. I'm battling against. Not the clock, is it? What am I battling against? Well, age. I mean, the natural thing, and what I've seen elsewhere, and I just feel more inclined towards, I suppose, the longer distances. For quite a few years, I thought I was a 100-mile runner. I'm not saying that's a short distance now, but I've just naturally gone to 200-mile races, I suppose, and challenges of that nature. And I look at, say, Nikki Spinks, who again is a very inspiring person I'm lucky to call a friend, and she's breaking records well into her 50s. So it probably is going longer, but it's not all about winning races and breaking records, of course, is it? So it might be that I can Yeah, who knows? And our sport is brilliant. I mean, as a footballer, I'll be washed up, decades ago, and as an ultra runner, I can still just about cut it. So it's a really cool sport in that respect. Lets us oldies still win the races. Yeah, no, I don't. I hope not to have a moment where it all stops. Although, yeah, let's see, I suppose.
Why do you think it is, Damien, that the oldies excel? Like, because I'm 21, and it's very confusing that whenever I do any ultra, I'm like almost always the youngest person. Everybody else is mid-40s, 50s, and like from like a performance standpoint, like I feel like it just makes no sense, but it's amazing.
I think there's an element of, it'd be fascinating to see some data on running clubs, I suppose. Like, definitely early on, I was told. I mean, it really does suit as sort of new parents to an extent. In that, I don't know if you found this, but like, it's much more flexible. You can do it any time. Like, I was playing football a lot before as a parent, but it was like, you need other people. You need certain times of the day, which is not always helpful for family and stuff. But running, I could do while the kids were asleep. Whenever they fall asleep, I could go running. Really flexible. So that was really helpful to discover it around then. That was good. And that's mid-30s. So there's an element of lifestyle, I think. And some of us just, you get to, I mean, I was relatively fit, but like, you definitely get people who have, got into their mid-late 30s, early 40s and don't feel fit. And running is one of those obvious things you try. And most of us go, wow, running, who knew? It's amazing. You've just got there a couple of decades earlier. So you've got a couple of decades on us. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I don't strictly know. I think, there's partly the lifestyle element. The simplicity of it actually is quite nice as well. After years of football, which doesn't have loads of kit, but something like cricket, I mean, it's so complex, so much kit. Triathlon as well, like so much kit involved, so much money. The simplicity was actually really quite nice. But what we are seeing is, lots of younger people coming into the sport, which is really exciting. I mean, just try not to beat us, please. Ideally, I mean, I'm not going to try and get you any faster because you're going to be beating me soon. So, my role now is to deliberately slow down all these fast youngsters to give us oldies a chance.
Well, there's a guy in my walking club who's I think he's in his 70s, but he's the smoothest, most graceful, and probably the speediest walker I've ever seen. It's incredible to try and keep up with. So,
wow.
I hope all three of us can keep going well into our 80s.
Well, you genuinely do see some incredible performances, don't you? Whether it's on social media or in races of people who in other sports wouldn't be able to do it anymore. But there's sort of two-footed endurance stuff seems to really work. It's it's amazing. Long may it continue.
Cool. And do you have any sort of words of advice, passing words that if someone's considering a 50 miler or just to get out and do some more things, what's your words of advice?
I would say it's probably more possible than you think. The big round numbers are intimidating, 50 or 100. I'm not going to say they're easy, but they're possibly more doable than they sound because you can go nice and slowly. There's all the great cake and sweets at the aid stations, and usually the scenery is great and the people are great. So it was a revelation the first time I did one. It was like, I love this. It's so much more enjoyable than a road marathon. Not that I'm against them, but like this was just much more enjoyable. And I suppose, a couple of training things are, try and keep most of your training easy. I'd say 80% easy, genuinely easy, and it's just more enjoyable anyway. Aside from all the physiological advantages you'll get from that in the longer term, and I suppose that cliche of listen to your body, which isn't always as straightforward as it sounds, but if you have got a little, what's so sad is so many new runners do get injured quite sort of predictably when that enthusiasm takes hold and you sort of do more and more. And that's so frustrating to see. I've seen it in sort of family members and friends that got into running and then get injured and it can be quite a battle. So I would just say, if in doubt, take the day off, or go and cycle instead, or rest up, listen to your body and think long term in that respect. So those two things, and then low mood, eat food, of course.
We've heard that like 8 times. I'm gonna get that tattooed on my arm.
You should. No excuse in a race then.
Well, thanks, Damian. We've taken up a lot of your time. You are awesome.
Oh, You're very kind indeed. But you're super impressive as well, and I love what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Especially Mia with all your strength work. Is it's really cool, and I love seeing more women doing strength work, more women getting into the sport. And I mean, ultra running, there's still it's massively male, but it is changing. And I honestly see so many women being better at this than men, which again I think goes against that idea that it's just about being super tough or whatever. No, sorry, it doesn't go against that, because women are super tough as well, but and often more so
kind of the macho,
the aggression and
I know what you said.
That stuff doesn't work really in ultra running. You know, it's often the muscular guy at the front, who's crying halfway round, and I love the idea that, you know, the little old lady tottering past him. I've seen that a few times, you know. So it's exciting times, and it's a great sport.
Well, and thank you from me. You're so inspiring. I truly loved your first book. I'll have to pick up your second one, but thank you. It's
finally. Well, you're very kind. But the second one's really depressing. I wouldn't bother, honestly. Save your money.
But truly, I think, you know, especially in your 40s, you can get into a funk where you remember having adventures, and then the kids come along and they're your excuse because I can't now. And it was truly wonderful to, just have the impulse back again and go, well, if you can do it, I can do it.
Oh, great. Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
They say comparison is the thief of joy, and in this case, it's not.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Well, if that's true, then I'm genuinely, it was, you know, that's wonderful to hear. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we were out in the lakes a couple of days ago, and we've got very sore legs now, but in terms of easy, it wasn't so easy, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, I do encourage some good downhill running as well. So you'll get benefit. Yeah, you'll get benefits from that, and it should be easier next time, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you again. You're super awesome. Thank you.
Well, you're very, very kind, and catch you soon, and take care. Thank you, guys.
All right, let us know what we can do for you, if anything.
Of course. Thank you.
Take
Cheers,
care.
Damo. Bye.